All right, welcome back to the Analytical Iowan podcast. It is going to be Sunday, November 23rd, as you're listening to this. Now, we are live over on TikTok. Now, this could end up being the only podcast I do. I may attempt to do a second one. We'll see how the timing works out for the rest of the night. But we are live here on TikTok, talking news, talking politics like we always do. Hoping to have a good group. I didn't really talk to anybody ahead of time, so I don't have any news talking politics like we always do. Hoping to have a good group. I didn't really talk to anybody ahead of time, so I don't have any moderators out there that I'm aware of. We'll see if TJ shows up. I think I may have a couple other moderators out there that may pop in. But we're going to be talking about everything going on. We've got the government open, which is good. We have the Epstein files where they're on the clock for releasing that. You have discharge petitions coming left and right out of the Republicans. You have them pushing back against Mike Johnson and the idea that he wanted to change the House rules to make discharge petitions harder. Republicans are saying, no, we don't want to do that. And it's changing how, what they're looking at. They are talking about doing even more discharge petitions. Now we have a vote on one coming up about unions and labor, and whether or not the government can collectively bargain. They're trying to overturn Donald Trump's executive order saying that he didn't have to collectively bargain with the unions. So this whole thing, they're using a discharge petition to get around the Speaker of the House. And with them getting around the Speaker, that's why Mike Johnson doesn't want to keep doing them. He wants to find a way to change the rules. But that's the whole point of the discharge petition. It is a simple majority, exactly half, but because there is an odd number in the House of Representatives, it is half plus one, basically, which is how you get to 218 votes. Now, multiple discharge petitions could be coming up, including ones on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. There is bipartisan work to fix those subsidies, extending them out for 2 years. And they are talking about potentially using a discharge petition to do that, because Republicans don't entirely want to bring it up. There is a deal where they have a guaranteed vote in the Senate, but Mike Johnson has said he doesn't have to abide by that, and he wasn't necessarily going to bring it up for a vote. So they may have to use a discharge petition to do that. Now, this bipartisan deal is going to be basically extending the subsidies as they are for 2 years. And once it gets called for a vote, it's going to be rather popular, I do believe. Now, it may not be as popular as the extension or as the Epstein file discharge petition, but this extension is going to be popular, and I think it will pass. I mean, if they use a discharge petition to get it through, they would already know they have the votes to make it happen. And then would it pass the Senate? Probably, because red states rely heavily on the ACA. So what they're going to do is potentially go around Speaker Johnson again. And one of the reasons I think these ACA credits are going to pass is because we are dealing with 2 years, right? They want to extend it for 2 years, which would mean Republicans wouldn't have to answer questions about the ACA credits or the subsidies or anything during next year's election, because they wouldn't have expired. They can say, well, we've got 2 years to figure it out. We got till the end of 27 to figure it out. We're going to come up with something. Or they'll say their typical talking point of, we're going to do something better to fix or amend the Affordable Care Act, something like that. But they wouldn't have to answer those tough questions going into the midterms, talking about the ACA credits. Neil says, bro, love listening to you. I always learn. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. I try to be informative, and I try to come from a fact-based perspective, and talk with an even keel. Too often when you're doing this, it's way easy to get wrapped up in the emotion of everything that is going on. But I think the ACA credits are going to pass. Now, will Donald Trump sign it? Probably, because I think there's a way they can talk to him and spin it and actually convince him that it is a good idea to sign it. Because if they spin it like a win, like, hey, Donald, if you sign this, you look like the hero for saving the ACA credits, and you'll help make sure that you get a bigger margin in Congress through the midterms so that the Republicans don't have to answer bad questions about it. And they will, if they get bigger margins, they can do even more of your stuff through Congress. If he thinks of it like a win, he is way more likely even more of your stuff through Congress. If he thinks of it like a win, he is way more likely to end up signing it. This is how Donald Trump thinks. Everything with him is transactional. Either he gets something out of it, or you spin it for popularity. That's how he thinks. It's very obvious how he ends up acting and reacting, etc. He's not a very deep thinker when it comes to all of this. He comes up, you can see what he's doing from a mile away. He's not a genius like MAGA wants you to believe. And his time in the Oval Office may be short. I've been saying for a while, I think the Epstein files could be the one thing that the Republicans use to move away from Donald Trump and actually start impeachment proceedings on their own guy. If they decide to impeach and remove Donald Trump and they use the files as their basis, it may be enough that they don't lose that 30 to 35% of the MAGA base that may never vote for Republicans again. Because they're dead set on just voting for Donald Trump. Or they would vote however Donald Trump dedicates them. But they also care about the release of the files. And if Donald Trump is doing stuff that looks like that he's protecting pedophiles, they could end up it could be enough that they turn on Donald Trump. It really could. And if Republicans it could be enough that they turn on Donald Trump. It really could. And if Republicans, have been saying this for a while, as long as Republicans are in the majority in the House of Representatives, it is entirely possible that he ends up, like if the House of Representatives pushes it, right now with them being in control, I don't think it passes the House unless they know they have the votes in the Senate to get rid of him. Brent says, what do you think of the phone call he had with the Saudi Prince Vindman talking about it? I don't know a lot about that phone call. I keep forgetting to look into it. But if he says it's that bad, and if it is actually that bad, it could be very damning, and it could just be another thing that the Republicans use. But I don't think it's going to be as easy for them to get rid of Donald Trump because of a phone call with the Saudi prince as it would be for them to turn around and use the files. It's damning for sure if it's as bad as what Vindman says, but I haven't looked too deep into it either. The problem Republicans have is it's not like it was before, right? If they move away from Donald Trump, they have to be worried about that MAGA base that is loyal to Donald Trump and Donald Trump only. And if they move on him, well, they need a good reason. Now, if it is the Epstein files, that may be enough. They may make that move, but a phone call with a Saudi prince may not be. But Donald Trump's time in the Oval Office, I think he does not make it all the way to 2029, to January 20th, 12 noon Eastern. G.I. Gallifrey Lives says, good evening, Eric. How's it going? Doing pretty good. Glad to see you out there. And we got a lot of people in the room right now. This is a good amount for me. But I think if they move on Donald Trump, they probably have a couple ideas in place. They are going to want to, before 28, they're going to want to move away from Donald Trump and move on to J.D. Vance. Whether that is because the Big Mac got him and Donald Trump is just not with us anymore, or if that is because they decide to use the Epstein files and move on or whatever, they're going to want to be prepared going into 28 for a successor to Donald Trump. But that's not even a guarantee. I did a video on this yesterday talking about this conspiracy theory, or maybe not even a conspiracy theory so much as it was a fringe idea. Excuse me. As it was a fringe idea, or this one article really that was talking about it. Something about the Bushes were planning to run a candidate. They were going to back a younger member of the Bush family, a cousin to George W. Bush, something like that, in 2028. That they were going to try to reclaim their George W. Bush, something like that, in 2028. That they were going to try to reclaim their party back from MAGA. And if they do that, they could be facing a very messy primary challenge in 28 going into the general election. And because J.D. Vance isn't well liked, if he is the president at that point, it's very rare that an incumbent president has a serious primary challenger. Gallifrey asks, will MTG go for it? She might. She may go for a presidential nominee. She may try to run on a third-party ticket, some kind of a populist, socialist combo ticket, going all the way from far-right MAGA to middle-of-the-road, maybe slightly left-leaning, especially when it comes to things like healthcare, etc. J.D. Vance 2028. Yeah, I don't think so. Julie says, I just got here. Are you talking about Trump again? I'm talking politics. If that's where the conversation takes me, that's where the conversation takes me. Trump can't run again, period. He is term limited out. And I don't think he's going to be a member, probably, of the Republican Party come 2028. I think they dump him. And I don't think he's going to be a member, probably, of the Republican Party come 2028. I think they dump him, in probably in short order. You may see before the midterms that they impeach and remove Donald Trump, specifically over the Epstein files. We've been talking about that. That they want to move away from Donald Trump. His numbers have an out, so they don't get annihilated in the midterms. Andrew says, Warren says Trump stinks, and Andrew says, thanks for the great information you do on YouTube and TikTok. Well, thank you. What I think is going to happen to Trump, he's probably going to get impeached and removed, or maybe the 25th Amendment, probably an impeachment. And they'll use the Epstein files as their vehicle to do that, because the MAGA base does care about the Epstein files, and they can say, "Hey, he was part of the Epstein thing. We need to get rid of him," and they'll move on to J.D. Vance. Now, what I think they're going to try to do is potentially ahead of the midterms. If they remove him before the midterms, they will say about President Vance that you need to give Republicans control of Congress. If they remove him before the midterms, they will say about President Vance that you need to give Republicans control of Congress for 2 more years so Vance can get his feet under him and continue to fix everything because he needs Republicans to do it. If they wait till after the midterms and Democrats have control of Congress, they would try to say, okay, in 28, you need to re-elect Vance and give Republicans control of Congress so he can fix everything because the Democrats blocked him from doing anything to fix anything. I can see both of those strategies for how Republicans are going to try to spin this narrative. I don't think either one works. J.D. Vance isn't well liked. And we were just talking, Republicans are going to try to spin this narrative. I don't think either one works. J.D. Vance isn't well liked. And we were just talking about the Bush family maybe considering primarying J.D. Vance, even if he is the incumbent president, not even the incumbent VP. Just that even if he is the incumbent president, that they may still try to primary him for a reasonable, moderate Republican, an old school Bush era Republican. Donna says, I don't think either one will work either. I don't think they will work, but that's their MO. That's their strategy, right? They don't come up with good plans. They don't win on necessarily policy. It's about creating a good narrative, creating a good sympathetic narrative. That's why I think if the Democrats win in 28, you're going to see the strategy being for 32 being, hey, you got to put the Republicans back in charge because the Democrats didn't fix it fast enough. Give us power back. We'll fix it. We'll actually get it fixed this time. It's all about saying the other side didn't do it fast enough or the other side blocked them from doing what they need to do. Just like Trump and these tariffs. If the Supreme Court blocks them permanently, he's going to say, well, see, I could have fixed the economy if they would have let my tariffs do their thing, but the Supreme Court blocked me. They don't have strategy anymore. They don't have policy anymore. Not since the Bush era. Julie says, Trump said he is going to promote Rubio. I am from Florida and despise him. Yeah, that's the thing. We're talking about how messy the 28 primary could be for Republicans. Now, realistically, when you are dealing with an incumbent president or vice president, the logical choice would be if their VP decides to run, they get the endorsement. And they run unopposed because you want to continue the legacy, you want them to have all the benefits of the previous administration and ride those coattails, etc. But this could be a situation where you have an incumbent, potentially either president or vice president, depending on what happens with Trump and if J.D. Vance becomes president before 28. Either way, you could have the incumbent in J.D. Vance getting primaried by potentially a Rubio nomination from Donald Trump if he's around, if he's still in good graces with the Republicans for being the nominee. You have Ted Cruz who said he might run. You have MTG who may consider running. You have the Bushes saying they may endorse a Bush trying to reclaim their party. It could be extremely messy for the Republicans in the 28 primary. And I don't see it getting any better. It's going to only get worse from here as the cracks keep forming in the party, as the infighting continues. They're self-destructing at this point. Julie says, "Can you imagine how Vance feels when Trump says that about Rubio?" Yeah, he's got to be thinking, "Do I really want to actually take that next position?" Maybe Vance is thinking he should resign as VP. Let Donald Trump appoint Rubio. I don't know. But Vance is not well liked. He is not the heir apparent to MAGA. He doesn't have control of the Congress like Donald Trump did. He doesn't have control of the party like Trump does. He's only there because Donald Trump needed a running mate. He wasn't even on Donald Trump's short list that anybody had really thought of pretty much until the week of the Republican National Convention when he came out and got introduced. We didn't even know. We thought Donald Trump may try to go it alone without a VP, until somebody convinced him he needed one. Damien says, yeah, but her post didn't work. Whose post? What are you talking about? I didn't follow what you were saying there. But the cracks are forming in the Republican Party. They're not a cohesive unit. And speaking about, Julie says Peter Thiel and money is the reason we have Vance. Yeah, yeah. I mean that's a big amount of it. But again, somebody convinced Donald Trump that J.D. Vance was the way to go, to bring in somebody young, in an outsider like him, and who could do all these things. But he wasn't Donald Trump's choice. AJ says, I think it was that billionaire scumbag Peter Thiel, the one that had a lot to do with that, getting us Vance. Yeah, he did, and I believe his name comes up in the Epstein files. So as we're dealing with that, you know, so as we're dealing with that, you know, his name and his recommendations could turn into mud, right? As all of this comes out, it's going to become more and more apparent that there's many people in the Republican Party who are connected to Jeffrey. And as those connections come forward, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be ostracized because of it. Coffee Man says, the Republican Party has dug their own graves. They held on to too long to Trump. The damage is done. Yes, you are absolutely right. They should have ran away from Donald Trump way back in 2021 after January 6th. They should have. They didn't. But they were also expecting Democrats to fix it. Lady Bay says, "Why is this?" Says this is funny. Why? What's funny about it? Gallifrey says, "I agree. There's no coming back from him." No, they're not. They are going to have to rule the Republican Party. Would be to get their asses kicked in 26, get their asses kicked in 28, and then let the Democrats have power for 10 years. Rebrand, regroup. Kicked in 28, and then let the Democrats have power for 10 years. Rebrand, regroup. It's going to be hard to regroup from Donald Trump. They are going to need to bring some people into politics and bring in Republicans that are outside of the national system, that have no ties to Trump. Being connected to Trump is going to be a litmus test going into 28. If the Republicans are turning on Donald Trump and when Republicans are getting ready to turn on Donald Trump, they are going to be asking, that hard question: do you support Trump? Should they go after him? Should they convict him? And those questions potentially could be needing to be answered going into the beginning of primaries next year. It's not a good time to be a Republican. RJ 127, our friend Will. Not when 86 Dems denounced socialism. Yeah, I saw that. There was a vote denouncing socialism at the same time Mamdani visited the White House, and 86 Dems joined with most of the Republicans to agree that the socialism was bad. It was a dumb vote. It was performative, and those Dems, a lot of them could end up getting primaried. They could end up getting primaried. They could end up getting primaried. And Will says Hakeem Jeffries must go. Yeah, I wouldn't be, as much as I thought he was going to be a good Speaker of the House, and I'll get to it in a minute, but we may end up being able to see Speaker Hakeem Jeffries before the end of this current Congress. Howard says there were a lot of people at the protest in D.C. today. There, Howard? Wasn't that today when you were going to be there? There, Howard? Wasn't that today when you were going to be there? I heard that there was a big protest. It is sending a signal to the Republicans that they may end up being, uh, as they're already considering using the Epstein files, the E files to move, uh, to maybe move on Donald Trump. They don't need uh, this pressure would help them make that decision, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And he says Trump is keeping friends close, enemies closer. No. He's not. And I'm pretty sure you're a MAGA, so bye-bye. And Mr. Wonderful says Trump is draining the sewer. No, he is the sewer, and he's already blocked. AJ says, oh yeah, we're not going to get anything accomplished with our current leadership. That's for damn sure. Yeah. Now, what I was saying about Hakeem Jeffries, we may see Speaker Jeffries before the end of this current Congress, before the midterms. Now, I know this is a long shot. Don't get me wrong. There's a special election coming up in Tennessee, December 2nd. Democrats pick up that seat. They end up at 214 members of the House. Long shot. It's a Republican district normally. Long shot pickup, but let's say they do. There's a special election coming up in Texas. And that special election is a runoff, and it's only 2 Democrats. So that's a guaranteed pickup. That's 215. There's an election for Mickey Sherrill's seat in New Jersey, safe blue district, more than likely a Democratic pickup. That brings us to 216. And then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene with her resigning Congress. And I know Will's out there, he's going to tell me I'm crazy. And I mean, I'm not saying that it is going to happen. I'm saying if it happens, if the Democrats pick up that seat, it would mean they would be at 217 members of the House of Representatives that are Democrats. It would just take one more resignation, one more passing, something like that with a Democratic pickup, and the Democrats would have control of the House. It is it just could happen. I'm saying it would be ridiculous, but it could happen. Howard says it was a blue wave earlier this month. Yeah, it was. It was. And the momentum is definitely in the favor of the Democrats. AJ says, such as Fetterman, Kristen Sinema, Jared Malkowitz, and Joe Manchin. Well, at least 2 of those are no longer in Congress, so we don't have to worry about them anymore. Tony, who I already blocked, says Democrats do nothing but cheat. Look at California. Yeah, Democrats didn't cheat in California. They took it to the voters. Texas was the one that cheated. They turned around, used their supermajority to force it through to redistrict out 5 seats that a judge had then said was an illegal gerrymander. Now, the Supreme Court put a temporary pause on that, and we will have to see what the results of that temporary pause are. But ultimately, those maps may still get tossed out. Democrats didn't cheat. They took it to the voters. They did it the right way. Julie says, what do you think about Newsom? He may not be the best, but we have to get someone who can win. Newsom, it's too early. Way too early. In fact, I think he is going to get dragged during the midterms. Republicans are going to do everything they can to tie all the candidates to him. And he may have peaked way too soon. I think the one who ends up getting the Democratic nomination may be somebody we hadn't thought of yet. or somebody who hasn't really made their intentions to even run known. Um, Maybe John Ossoff out of Georgia. Maybe Shapiro out of Pennsylvania. Maybe Cooper out of North Carolina. Bashir out of is it Kentucky? I mean, there are so many options. And J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois, another one who I mean, there are so many options. And J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois, another one who got that mentality. I just think it's way too early for Newsom. And if anything, he's doing the best thing he can by taking the focus of the Democrats right now, and everyone's focused on him. Howard says we'll keep winning. Yeah, we're going to keep winning. And even if we don't pick up all of those seats, we should pick up at least 2. And if we get 3, I mean, it just puts the pressure on them. Let's see. AJ says, oh, let's tap, tap, tap. Yeah, for the likes. Warren asks, who would you like to see in Hakeem Jeffries' spot? Jamie Raskin, AOC. There's probably a few others I can't think of off the top of my head. The biggest problem I had with Hakeem Jeffries, I thought he was going to be great until it seemed like he was nothing more than a shill for Nancy Pelosi. That she was telling him what to do and he was doing it. We don't need somebody like that. We don't need somebody, a speaker, who is going to be answering to somebody else in the chamber. They need to be speaker. If they're going to be speaker, they need to be the speaker and have control of their party. And if the Democrats get control, whether it be before the midterms or after, they need to go back in, put the rules back in place, and do what Nancy Pelosi did. Get rid of the vote to vacate the chair so there's no drama there. Rules back in place, and do what Nancy Pelosi did. Get rid of the vote to vacate the chair so there's no drama there, and just move on. And hopefully the Democrats can come to somebody, whoever it is going to be, in one vote. Julie says, I like Ossoff and Pritzker. Very well could. They're both good. And the thing with the Democrats right now is they have so many good nominees or good people that could get the nomination. They have tons of options when it comes to getting a ticket. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be down to, oh, well, we got to run these 2 people or we're not going to win. There's so many options, you know, and Buttigieg might be another one that is potential for in the mix, maybe as a VP candidate. I don't know. Some people are suggesting Kamala Harris may make another attempt at another run. And maybe she could. Everything's going to change going forward. And the Democrats are in such a bad way, in a bad shape right now. Or the Republicans are, I mean. I think I said Democrats. But the Republicans are in such bad shape, they can't agree with themselves. It's going to be a struggle for them in 26 and in 28. I think the Democrats end up picking up 40, 50 seats in the House. They could pick up 4 seats in the Senate, which is, you know, it sounds crazy, but if they pick up 4, that's how many they lost in 24, right? That would put them right back in the majority. It'd be different seats, but they could have control. If they have control of the Senate and the House, Donald Trump's getting nothing through. In fact, if I had to pick one or the other, I would almost rather have them have control of the Senate. Because if they have control of the Senate, Donald Trump wouldn't be able to do something like nominate a replacement for Samuel Alito or Clarence Thomas that is just as far right in MAGA as either of them. They would have to come up with somebody who is halfway decent. Could you imagine if the Republicans have control of Congress and there's a vacancy and he pushes Judge Aileen Cannon through as his nominee? entirely possible that he would attempt that because he owes her one for saving his butt in the classified documents trial. And that's how he thinks, that's how he acts, right? He's transactional. Well, you got me something, I'll get you something. You had my back, here's a reward, here's a present. He doesn't view the country or any of these positions as serious as they really are. It's all about accolades and props and what he can do to make sure people are doing the things he wants them to do. So, the midterms are going to be interesting. Republicans are in a dire panic at this point. They're trying to figure out how to get away from Donald Trump. I still think the Epstein files are going to be how they do it. I think they end up making their move. They move on Donald Trump, and Julie says he's all about payback, both good and bad. Oh, yeah, definitely. You say something good about him, he'll do something nice for you. You attack him, he's going to hit you back 10 times harder. But problem is, he's not landing his punches nearly as well as he used to. His hitbacks aren't working the way they once did. He's failing a lot. But he's trying to maintain this image of being the tough guy. It's not working anymore. It really isn't. He needs to be... user says... Dees says he never ran the U.S. Well, Trump? No, he didn't. Well, he did it. He did during a little bit of his first term. Mostly because he left everything alone. If you watch the trajectory of everything that was going with the economy, the numbers follow the same pattern they did under Obama. He was hands off, didn't really do anything to change anything, and he was just kind of there playing president. And he let things kind of slide. This time, ended up being so hands-on. And yeah, as D says, the tail end of Obama, then C-19. Yeah, exactly. And if you watch how he handled the COVID-19 pandemic, he botched it entirely. I said at the time, and I'll say it now, Universe handed him a re-election. They handed him a second term on a silver platter. All he had to do was properly handle the COVID-19 pandemic. And if he would have handled it like a true president, like somebody who cared about the country, we would have been fine, and we would have come out of it. We wouldn't have lost 1 million people to COVID, and we would have ended up recovering nicely, and everybody would have been willing to vote for him. Maybe not everybody, but enough that he got reelected. Part of the reason why Joe Biden won with the numbers he won by was because of how Donald Trump handled the pandemic, and people were still living in that moment going, this is horrible, we need to do something to fix it. Warren says people are tired of Trump. Yeah, they are. And it's this constant state of everything going on, right? I recorded the Analyticaliowan podcast, I think it was earlier today, and I made a comment about, well, we had those elections back in November, and I went, wait a minute, that was only like 2.5 weeks ago. And it just hit me, like, because of everything going on with Trump and how he makes everything so supercharged, and there's always stuff to talk about, and always stuff going on, every day feels like a week, or 2, or 3. It is ridiculous, and people are tired about it. Bam says the real Epstein files will never be shown. I don't know about that. I think they're going to try to do some stuff with the files, but remember, these aren't the only copies. The ones the DOJ have is not the only set of copies for the Epstein files. There's more copies out there. Like that set of emails that came out, I think, last weekend talking about Donald Trump and Bubba. That all came out because of the House Oversight Committee and them doing a subpoena to the Epstein estate. Okay? Those came from the Epstein estate, not the DOJ. There's so many things in here that, they're going to be able to go after the originals. And certain members of the House of Representatives, including Thomas Massey, and for as long as she is there, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has said that if the administration tries to fuck with releasing the full files because they have an idea of what's in there, if they try to mess with it, that they'll just read the client names on the House floor. And if they read them on the House floor, they can't be sued. Now, they can be publicly attacked, sure. But you have members of the Republican Party turning on Trump and saying, hey, you better not mess with releasing the files, and you had better release the proper files. Or else. I think we're going to see ultimately we're going to see the release of the files. And if they try to mess with releasing them, or if when Donald Trump comes out with more information in the files that he's there, and some of the negative things that are probably in there about him, I think the Republicans make that move and they turn on him. That they decide now is the time and they vote to remove Donald Trump. They'll make the hard choice. And they'll rip that Band-Aid off, trying to gear up for 28, maybe having a sympathetic story with J.D. Vance. But they're going to try it. I really do. I think the Republicans are going to try to make that move. And, I think that is just how they're going to play with it. They're going to do it because they need to make that change. Julie says, Pam Bondi is extremely dangerous because she only works for Trump. Yeah, and I thought she was actually going to be slightly better than she was, coming from the fact that she is a former attorney general for the state of Florida. She's an actual attorney, etc., that she has time in the role. That I thought she was going to do better and she was going to be more competent than she is. Turns out she's just a shill for Donald Trump. And now there are some stories out there saying that come next year, maybe even as early as January, February, that Donald Trump may shake up positions. That Kash Patel, Pam Bondi may be in jeopardy. They may be gone. Oliver's mom says impeachment is coming. I believe so. I think it's not a matter of if, it's just going to be a matter of when. Now, they could surprise me and never impeach him, but I think it's going to be a matter of when. I mean, the thing Donald Trump should hope for is that the Big Mac gets him. Julie says, I'm in Florida and she was horrible. I didn't know much about her from her time as Attorney General. Just knowing that she came from that role, she'd already done it at the state level. I thought compared to some of the people he was putting in certain positions, she was going to be better than what we got. She definitely was more qualified than, say, RFK Jr. to have the head of Health and Human Services. Gallifrey says, she is one of his girls. She was in his pageants. I've heard people say that. I don't know for sure if that is 100% true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. And we know how Donald Trump thinks about those pageants. He talked about walking in on the girls changing as teenagers and how it was just acceptable. I mean, Donald Trump is going to be listed in those files when they come out and when we see the light of day. And as Will pointed out on the Rational Boomer podcast, if they try to redact him out everywhere, there's going to be people that are smart enough that are going to figure out, who they meant, right? Like they tried, he talks about the gal who needed numbers off of a rocket for one of the space launches and how they had blacked it out and tried to redact it. She just held it up to the light and could read right through it and got the numbers she needed, etc. people are going to figure out if they try to redact too much out of this or how they do it. There's going to be all sorts of people with whatever is released that are going to be going crazy over it. These files are going to be the downfall of the Republican Party. Oliver's mom says the threats to Senator Kelly and the others may get him before the e-files. They could. The only reason I think the files are going to be what does it is because they can make their move on him with the files and not lose that 30 to 35% of the MAGA base that will never vote again if they move on Donald Trump. Because if they move on him because of the files, that base does care about the Epstein files and what happened to these thousands of girls, or maybe not even just girls. So far, we have only heard about female victims, but they have others, right? There could be boys that were on that list too. Entirely possible as far as victims. And there is a bunch of the MAGA base that wants to see those files in their entirety. Molly says, when you redact and make copies of it, you will not see it. No. But might not have to. There could be enough context. If they go through and they redact a short name all the time that looks like it's only 4 or 5 characters, and there's enough there in the files that, unless they get rid of all the pages, there may be enough context to figure out who it is. Marty says, everything you liberals have done to take down Trump has failed. Well, I've already blocked Marty because we don't need MAGA Trump humpers in here. But as Gallifrey says, Republicans will take him down, genius. That's my point. I think Republicans will be the ones to use the files to turn on Trump, so they don't end up losing that MAGA base. As Sue says, they're not smart enough to not leave clues. Oh yeah, and it's not like these files from like the emails that were released a weekend or two ago. They're not in code. They're not very well hidden, right? Like in the one email, it says something like, we're bringing in the models, a number of girls. I don't remember what the number was. So many girls, and they're all beautiful, or something like that. It specifically says that they're flying them in. It's not like they were talking in some sort of cryptic code, or like what we did during World War II when Germany couldn't break our code, and that was just by having the Navajo talk, right? They were speaking in their native language. They weren't even using a code. They were just talking. But because the language is one that they could break, it was actually coded. No, this was just like they were so convinced they were never going to get caught. They were brazen about it. And that's how a big chunk of these files are. Gallifrey says the last one just passed. Are you talking about the Navajo code talkers? Because I thought that was yeah, okay, you were talking about the Navajo code talkers. Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but that was an interesting story coming out of World War II. And it was an amazing strategy, and kind of one of the fun facts I like about World War II. Of course, I'm a history buff. If you haven't noticed from some of the ways I talk about politics and everything, I compare a lot of things to things that have happened in the past. Because that's a good way to get a feel for what is going on. Republicans are going, once this all comes crashing down around them, they are going to be in a world of hurt for a while. They could end up having to ultimately regroup and rebrand for maybe a decade, maybe two. Well, thank you, Miva, for the gift and the joining the fan club. I don't entirely know what the fan club actually does here on TikTok, but thank you for joining. Glad you're getting something out of the live. Will says does nothing. Oh, okay. Well, I haven't looked too deep into it. I see every now and then it pops up. But anyway, yeah, we got a lot of stuff we're watching. Al Green out of Texas is saying he may have impeachment articles brought up by the end of the year. But again, going back to what I've been saying, it's going to take Republicans to side with it. And depending on what they do, if the Republicans move it out of the House, I think I would be surprised if articles pass the House when Republicans control the House of Representatives and they don't end up passing the Senate, right? Like they're going to move when they impeach him, whether it's a Democratic-led impeachment or Republican impeachment, the Republicans aren't going to vote for it to get over the finish line in the House if they don't already have the votes in the Senate to remove Trump. I say that a lot, but that's really what I think. Gallifrey says, I agree. I think we are going to have another New Deal type of policy for the people. I've been saying that. I've been saying that for a while, that the Democrats need to run on a New Deal style policy. Something simple, and take a page out of Donald Trump's playbook in a way. And this is one of the few things that I give Donald Trump credit for. Because he's dumb and he doesn't use big words, it resonated with the people. And that should be how you talk about whatever your policy is, if it's a New Deal style policy or whatever. As you said on your live the other night, you go to the rural areas and say, hey, did you make money under the Republicans? No. Did you make money the last time the Democrats were in office? Okay, I'm going to make you money. And that is one way to, when you're talking plain, you get somewhere. Biker D says, hey, Eric. Hi. Will says, Russia wrote the peace plan. No, not Rubio. Yeah. That peace deal is, once again, it sounds like it is something that is one-sided for Russia. And Ukraine's never going to agree to it. Why would they? They get nothing out of it except an end to the war. They lose everything. If this is the type of plan that they would have agreed to if they had actually lost in the week, like we said it was going to happen, what people thought was going to happen when Russia first invaded Ukraine. Everyone thought Ukraine was going to be run over in a week. And they've been holding their own for 3.5 years. Why would they suddenly agree to some kind of a deal that would give away the farm at this point? Well, it says J.D. Vance working behind the scenes to solidify his power. He's working on it, but I don't think it's going to work. He's not well liked. If you know, you know, says hi. If they didn't oust him last time, it ain't going to happen now by design. I don't agree with that. Because I think they're getting ready to move past Donald Trump, and they need a reason to do it that's not going to upset the base. Gallifrey says healthcare loans build up the middle class. Exactly. Oliver's mom says Democrats will have to Plain talk, exactly. Um, Will says the G20 has condemned the plan. Yeah, they did. The only people that approve of this plan are a few people in this administration and the Russians. Uh, Biker D says Trump didn't write that plan. It's Putin's. I'd agree. I've already blocked Ivan. If you know, you know, says MTG. Something is up there. I don't trust it. Yeah, she's got a plan. She does have a plan. I think she's either going to run for governor, try to make a run for Senate, either as a Republican or as an independent, or she's going to make a play for the presidency. And either way, I don't think she goes anywhere with any of it. But she also waited until 2 days after her retirement fully vested, and she will end up getting pension for life. Morrow says, if Ukraine agrees, Russia will come for more. Exactly. Why would they give in? They may get a year or two of peace out of it, and then Russia's going to want even more. There's no reason for Ukraine to agree. One of the last times they agreed to something like this that included them scaling back their military was the Budapest Memorandum, where they agreed to give the nuclear weapons back to Russia in exchange for guarantees from the United States and Russia saying, don't worry, little buddy, we'll protect you no matter what. And then Russia ends up being the aggressor here. And where have we been? Well, we've been helping, but only financially. We haven't put boots on the ground. We haven't done any sort of military strikes against Russia. Sure, we've done sanctions and stuff, but it hasn't worked so far. If you know, you know, says he tried to overthrow the government and got reelected. My faith is waiting for justice. Yeah. The thing about that is the only reason he was able to get reelected was twofold. Mitch McConnell didn't have the balls to turn against Donald Trump in the second impeachment. If they would have voted to remove him and bar him from office again, we wouldn't be here. But Mitch McConnell said, well, he's already out of office. It's a moot point. We're going to go ahead and we're not going to do anything. It's a criminal justice matter. And then you had Merrick Garland sitting on his hands going, no, it's a political matter. They should have dealt with that in Congress. I'm not doing anything. Both sides wanted the other to deal with their mess and didn't do a damn thing. Will says, not with Jeffries and Schumer in leadership. They're beholden to corporate money. Yeah, and I think you're going to see a change in Democratic leadership after the midterms. Schumer may not be, because I think he's up for re-election. He may not even be a senator anymore. Jeffries may not even survive. Because he endorsed Mamdani going into the election and turns around and basically stabs him in the back. So Democrats, these old school Democrats, may end up getting voted out, and we'll see an entire new generation and a new ideology in the Democratic Party. Kishmael says, I wish there would be the same for the SCOTUS members who lied during confirmation. Yeah, I mean, best they could do is impeach and remove. Problem is, it's such a high bar, it's never been done. Will says she is DOA in Georgia statewide, talking about MTG. Yeah, she's probably DOA, doesn't mean she's not delusional enough to think she could do something like that. Blues Lover says exactly. She has her pension and I think health insurance. Yeah, she has it for life. MTG is part of it there. She's got everything in there for ever, basically. Biker D says Schumer's Jeffries needs to go. And they may. Or worst case, if they keep their positions, they may not get voted in as leadership. and they may decide to move on towards somebody else. Sanders says the U.S. is falling way short of its moral obligations to the people of Ukraine. Not even just moral. We agreed in the Budapest Memorandum when they gave up their nukes that we would protect them. We stopped short of letting them join NATO, but we agreed to protect them. And now where are we? We're not doing anything. If you know, you know says the new wave of Democratic Party is beginning in NYC. It's sure looking like it. Problem is they have to find a way to get that same message out everywhere. Will says, sure, take on Ossoff. It will be a curb stomping. I want to see that. I do. I want to see her get beat with 60% of the vote going to Ossoff. That would be hilarious. I would take joy in that. And then Ossoff could turn his win against MTG into momentum, and maybe he makes a presidential or vice presidential run in 28. In worst case, if he doesn't make it, he could stay in Congress, so he wouldn't be out anything. Nauseous ambient since evening says evening, sir. Awesome seeing you live. Well, thanks for joining me. I decided to do this kind of last minute. Linda says, do you think about Marjorie Greene Taylor? I don't know what you mean by that. We've been talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her getting her butt kicked potentially in a statewide Georgia race, whether that be for governor, whether that be for senator. And if she's thinking she is going to, Linda, you're talking about her resigning first of the year. We were talking about that. She waited till 2 days after her pension will kick in, so she's guaranteed her salary for the rest of her life. And she's got a plan. She's going to do something either statewide in Georgia, or she's going to try to build a third party or rebrand going into 28. Something like that. Will says Trump is asking for money to protect him from impeachment. Well, two things. One, how is money going to protect him from impeachment other than buying off members of Congress? But of course he is. He can't run for election again, but yet he's still grifting and trying to gain any sort of financial ability he can. I read something he's talking about having another couple $1 million a plate fundraising dinners, which is ridiculous that he should even be allowed to do it. But nobody's stopping him. And until they put an end to it, because the people that would be in charge of investigating any of his campaign abuses like this, he's in control of. So they're not going to do anything. Linda says, I think she may want to run for VP. She might try it. She might try to make a case for being a VP. But I don't think a J.D. Vance, Marjorie Taylor Greene ticket would work. Vance is already not well liked, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the outs with MAGA. It wouldn't work. If you know, you know, says domestic threat number one. No one is stopping him. Yeah, that's half the problem. The safeguards we have in place aren't holding as well as we thought they would. I think one of the things you are going to see when Donald Trump is out of office is that you're going to see a lot of changes to things. And I think you may see an amendment or two. I know it's a high bar to actually pass one, but I do. I think you're going to see an amendment or two beyond the Equal Rights Amendment. I think that may get ultimately passed as well. But you might see an amendment or two about who can run for president, clarifying. Maybe they put another thing out there, and maybe it's not just for president. Maybe they actually pass it for any elected office for on the federal level. No felons. If you know, you know, says term limits. Maybe term limits for Congress. It is one of my favorite complaints, I guess you could say. One of the things I complain about a lot when it comes to term limits. Not just term limits, we also need age limits. And I say age limits coming from a state where we've got a 92-year-old senator who wants to run for re-election. Linda says, I wish our government was set up for term limits, but it's not. Seniority is how it works. Yeah, you're right. Seniority is how it works, and that's how you end up with, like I was just saying, a 92-year-old senator wanting to run for re-election. If you know, you know. I'm a radical. One person, one vote. You're talking about the Electoral College. Getting rid of the Electoral College would be a challenge because it is in the Constitution. It would take an amendment to get rid of the Electoral College. But one of the ways they are talking about going around the Electoral College is there's a bunch of states that are talking about forming a deal where they all agree with each other. And I believe Congress would have to sign off on this, so I don't know if it would ever happen. But the idea would be, and I will pick on Iowa. Let's just say Iowa says, okay, from now on, winner of the popular vote nationwide is who we give our electoral votes to. Doesn't matter who won the state of Iowa, we agree with the national popular vote. And if enough states that would agree to do that would be enough to go past the 270 number to win the Electoral College, then it would be the same thing as having a nationwide popular vote. You would keep the Electoral College, but you basically just outdated it at that point. If you know, you know says, if we're going to restructure, let's do it. Might be the way to do it with all of the problems that this administration has shown us are there. Oliver's mom says, I don't think the crimes of the e-files have a statute of limitations, federal, state, or in the Virgin Islands. I don't know about state. But federally, I believe, and also in the Virgin Islands, they do not have a statute of limitations. So there potentially could be something there. Oliver's mom says lots of charges incoming. RRR says, give me a reason I should vote blue at the midterms. Look around. What have the Republicans done? Can they lead? They had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. The government was shut down for about 45 days. Couldn't lead. What have they accomplished in 11 months? What have they done? Pass tax cuts for wealthy people? Cut food stamps? Cut Medicaid? What have the Republicans done that helps the everyday person? Are you financially better off right now with Republicans in charge? The answer is no. Everything's worse. They said they were going to fix it. They said they were going to fix everything, and they haven't done shit. If you know, you know says they've terrorized the populace. Yeah. By using ICE to go after anybody and everybody who looks or sounds different that they don't like. Linda says, your children, your future, everything our country stands for your livelihood. Yeah, exactly. Gallifrey says, whoever helps the middle class will get the votes. Yeah. Yeah. If you know, you know says it's Project 25 in full effect. Despite Donald Trump lying about not knowing anything about it, they've implemented quite a bit of it. And they did it way faster than anybody anticipated. And I think they're doing it because Donald Trump is not going to be with us long term. And I don't know that J. Vance will have the charisma to be able to end up doing anything with it. Eno says it was better under Biden. It was. One of the things that I miss about the Biden era of politics, it was boring. There wasn't nearly as much to talk about. Now, I got my start on TikTok, sure, during Biden. But that was because I was talking about the election and everything involving Donald Trump leading up to the election. But for the big chunk of the Biden era, there wasn't nearly as much to talk about. It was boring. Sure, they didn't get nearly enough done. They could have done way more. And if they would have had better senators and they wouldn't have had Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, they might have gotten a lot more accomplished if we wouldn't have failed them and given Joe Biden a Democratic House of Representatives for his last 2 years in office. He may have gotten even more done. Linda says, I agree. Well, thank you. Oliver's mom says many of the executive orders are almost word for word Project 2025. Yeah, they are. If you know, you know says I slept better. A lot of us did. It was not nearly as chaotic. Linda says, great listening to you. I will continue to follow you. Well, I'm glad you enjoy everything I'm doing. I appreciate the follow. And this will be up on YouTube and over on the audio will be up on Spotify probably early tomorrow morning. I usually post all my lives up there, and depending how the rest of the night goes, I may still record a separate podcast for tomorrow. This may be a bonus, but this also might just be the Analytical Iowan podcast for tomorrow. Also, you can get the video version over on YouTube, the audio up on Spotify. So, just so you guys know what's going on with that. Curious One says, Democrats should remind Americans of how we have made their lives better, such as FMLA. Yeah. That's one of the problems with Democrats. They don't crow about their accomplishments. Not enough. They don't. They let things coast. They want their accomplishments to stand on their own, and they figure people will just go with it because they see what they got accomplished. Whereas Republicans will even if they're lying, they will scream at the top of their lungs about all of the things they have gotten done, right, wrong, or otherwise. And they'll even lie about some of the accomplishments they have, so it looks like they've done more. Kate says, I didn't wake up under Biden wondering what the hell happened overnight. Exactly. The number of times I get up in the morning and I look at the news feed and go, Jesus Christ, I already had a full slate of stuff to talk about for the podcast, and I could do 2 hours sometimes. And that's within 10 minutes of waking up. It's ridiculous. Faye says, I just read up on your live, and I like what you're spitting those bars out. Very truthful. Sent you a follow. Well, thank you so much for that. Glad you're getting something out of what I'm posting out. I just call it like I see it. And, you know, it may seem that I'm leaning Democratic because they're the better party right now. But once we get past this, and once we move on, and once we start to fix all of the problems, if the Democrats get back in power and they're not doing enough, we need to hold them accountable too. They can't get power and then coast. One of the reasons why they were able to overturn Roe v. Wade is because Um, they sat back and said, oh, they're never going to overturn that. We're fine. We don't have to do anything. We don't need to codify it. We can do it later. So when they had the option to do it, they didn't do it. Kate asks, have you ever ran for office in Iowa? No, I have not. I have never ran for office. I don't know if I would actually be any good in office. Maybe. But for now, I'm on the outside talking about it. And that's where I could help at this point. So that's what I'm doing. Gallifrey says we have to hold all of our people to the coals to do what they promised. Exactly. Once the Democrats are back in power, they need to know we need business. And that that they need to do what they promised to do for us. Because we elect them to get certain things done. Kate says, thanks for all you do on here. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you're getting something out of everything I do here. Especially with TikTok seeming to suppress my content. It is good to see that, people are getting something out of it. Curious One says, hopefully we will have a new style of government. Get rid of the money. One of the things they need to do is they need to get rid of Citizens United. And it's going to be hard. Because I don't know if they can do it with just a law and by saying that corporations aren't people. But they could, and it would take another Supreme Court case to maybe get it overturned. But we need to get the money out of politics. And the fact that some of these wealthy people and these businesses, they can use PACs and stuff and just donate millions and millions and millions of dollars gives them an edge when it comes to, their voice. They get a much louder voice than, say, if I can only donate as a single person, I think it's 1,000 or 2,000 at the top end before it starts becoming a problem. That's a thing where certain people and certain groups have way too much power. If you know, says we need to understand we are no longer playing by the old rule book. Exactly. It's like Mike the Rational Boober and I talk about whenever we get together. The era of when they go low, we go high is over. When they go low, we got to get down in the mud and we got to fight with them. You got to knock the bully on his ass and show him who's boss. Faye says it's going to take us to save us. It will. And I think we can. But the other thing it's going to take is once the Democrats are back in power, it is going to take time and it's going to take money. This may not be something we can fix in 4 years, right? Because I can already hear, not even 4 years, 2. I can already see 2030 midterm elections. Republicans saying, well, you got to put us back in power. Democrats haven't done enough to fix everything. Give us Congress back and we'll get it fixed. We'll put a check to these Democrats who aren't doing enough. And I can already hear the complaint. Same with 2032, saying you got to win, or the Republicans got to win because Democrats didn't fix anything fast enough. And it's going to take time, and we have to realize that and not let the fear-mongering of the Republicans get in the way. Kate says, I am in Iowa West to Des Moines. Well, I'm glad to see another Iowan here. Kate says, who is choice for next Iowa governor? Rob Sand, I think, is going to be the one to get it. As long as he gets the Democratic nominee. If he's a Democratic nomination, or if he got the nomination from the Democrats, I think he is going to do great. He's the only statewide elected Democrat, and he's talking a good game right now. Curious One says, how much could SCOTUS hold back any progress the Dems try to accomplish? They could potentially block a bunch. That's why they need to look at packing the court. Expand it to 13, put 4 liberal justices on there, and, you know, do it. The other thing they could do, maybe without expanding the court, is send a clear message. Do what FDR did. FDR wanted to pass the New Deal, and the Supreme Court was talking about scrapping it back then. And he basically said, you guys go up against my New Deal and you scrap it, I'm going to pack the court. Try me. And they backed off. If you know, you know, says that the only thing Republicans have done for the last 40 years is manufacture crisis for Democrats have had. Yeah, exactly. Kate says, Rob has my vote. Yeah, if he gets the Democratic nominee, he's got mine too. And I think he's got a great chance of winning. He's going to inherit a mess. And he's also going to be inheriting a time bomb set by Kim Reynolds. Because for the next 2 years, starting in January, the Iowa food stamp program is changing. There's going to be so many limits to what you can buy with food stamps, it's going to almost be unusable. And I'm just afraid that Rob Sand, if he gets the win, when he becomes governor, it'll be the second year of that program. But if he doesn't get it fixed and changed fast enough, that he's going to take some of the blame for it still going on. RRR says Trump wants to send Obamacare money to the people, not to insurance companies. It's the same thing. What's the difference? And if they do it like they do with a lot of things, they will end up, only sending us a pittance and say, well, it's the same thing. Why isn't that, we gave you $500. Why isn't that covering your medical bills when, they took, instead of giving the insurance company, say, $2,000 to lower your premiums? Something like that. I don't know what the actual credit is, but it is, it's not a good plan. It's a dumb plan. Curious One says, how many people will use it for insurance? Well, supposedly, at least according to a plan released by Rick Scott, it is supposed to be used kind of like a health savings account or a flex spending plan or something like that, where there would be limits to what you could actually spend the money on. But of course, they want to name it after Donald Trump and call them Trump health accounts or something like that. Oliver's mom says universal health care is the answer. Yes, it is. Gallifrey says, to RRR, have you ever looked at a medical bill? Exactly. Those bills, they start out with one price, then your insurance company gets involved. They've pre-negotiated down a bunch, and they barely pay a pittance compared to what you pay in a lot of cases, specifically for the like just doctor visits and stuff. If you know, says most people aren't secure enough to allot that money for insurance. Exactly. Most people are not stable enough that they you give them an extra $1,000 that they're going to be able to just sit it in a bank account and let it wait until they need it. Now, if you put it in some kind of an account like what they're talking about, where all you can spend it on is medical, that's different. But if you just give them a check, what a lot of people would do is turn around, well, shit, I got to pay rent this month. I got to buy groceries. Oh, well, I've been putting off a car repair or whatever. And they'll take that money, they'll spend it somewhere else in the economy, and then if something big comes up, they're going to go, fuck, I should have saved that money. If you know, says medical bills are negotiable. They probably are. And as I told a coworker of mine a while back who was freaking out because they had a bill that was higher than what they expected and they were wanting payment. I said, you know, you can pay them as little as possible. Find out what the minimum payment is. Some places will take as little as $5, maybe $10, whatever. And just you keep paying on it until you paid it off. You know, it wasn't even a huge bill, but it was bigger than he planned on. And it wasn't enough to ruin him. But he was annoyed that it was higher than what they had quoted him because he didn't have insurance at the time. And just I was trying to talk him through it. He said he wouldn't have even gone through with the appointment because of no insurance if he wouldn't have realized how much or if he would have known how big the bill was actually going to be. So he's going to pay him as little as he can for as long as he can and just drag it out. Curious One says, I actually work for a major healthcare insurance and universal healthcare is cheaper and works better. If done right, it would work a lot better. A couple of things they would need to get rid of. You shouldn't need referrals to go see a specialist. You know, I've had 2 or 3 separate issues in the last several years with my feet. Nothing big. One was a stress fracture, very minor. And really all I needed was basically to get rid of the inflammation and I was fine and it healed on its own. And then I had something stuck in my foot. Well, I went to the walk-in clinic here in my town for all of it. Primary care didn't catch it. For one of those 2, I had them going to my main doctor, didn't catch it. And then I went to the podiatrist. Podiatrist was able to fix the problem right off the bat. But because of insurance, I had to go through the steps before I could get the referral to get to the podiatrist, because otherwise insurance wasn't going to cover it. I should just be able to have gone to the podiatrist and gotten covered without having to take that extra step. But because insurance companies don't want to pay out for specialists if they don't have to, they make you take that extra step ahead of time. If you know, you know says, communication with debt collectors helps. They want to work with you and we need universal health care. We do. Geralt of Riviera says, New Orleans is going to show ice. They should not be one to mess with. Yeah. Oliver's mom says people who don't have insurance go to the ER for care and are sicker when they go there. Yeah, exactly. They end up going to the ER, and I know that because I had an ex who did that. For a while, she didn't have health insurance. And because she knew she wouldn't get turned away at the ER, would go to the ER. Now, she didn't go very long without insurance, but still, not the point. She ended up getting insurance and then started seeing regular doctors and etc. But she still knew that if she absolutely had to, she could always go to the ER. If you know, you know says also it's another doctor visit you have to pay for. Right. There's another copay. You got to put money out. And you got to take the time to go do it. You shouldn't end up needing to go with that kind of a hassle. Geralt of Riviera says, my TikTok account name is from The Witcher show. I've never seen it, so I didn't catch the reference. Gallifrey Lives says, I've been waiting for insurance to compensate me for laying out money for braces 3 months already. Yeah. Waiting for, they are, if you don't pay them your premium, oh good Lord. You know, they want their money up front. Heaven forbid. But when it comes time on the back end for them to pay you out, you're waiting forever. If you know, you know says preventative medicine is where it's at. We'd save lives and lots of money. Oh yeah. Being able to afford preventative care And going in, one of the companies I worked for, and I haven't worked for them for a few years, but I worked for them for a long time. They found out through their insurance plans, they saved tons of money on insurance payouts if everybody just did like a couple of preventative things a year. And they had a plan. If you did not do like three or two of like six, there was like six options, you had to do two of them that were preventative in nature. Like you had to get like an eye exam, which you had to maybe went and got your teeth cleaned every year, once a year. You got a flu shot. Couple, if you had maybe it was that time when you were due for a major health screen, if you could prove you got a preventative screening, something like that. You did that, did two of those items. You did a yearly physical, and if you did a yearly beyond the physical, you had to do a like you had to have, as part of the physical or separate, you had to have your blood work done and have your numbers ran so you knew where your cholesterol and your blood sugars and all of that was year after year. But they found by doing just those few things, they cut us a break of like $15 a week off of the price of our insurance premium, something like that. It would save us. But they found out that the millions it was saving them in insurance payouts by people just being aware of where their health was staggering. If you know, says they'll cut you off with a quickness. Yeah, you quit paying that insurance premium, especially if you're on some kind of private plan that's not employer based, where they're not taking the premiums right out of your check. You quit paying them, a lot of times they'll cut you off in days. If you know, says sometimes they pay for your gym or nutrition classes too. Yeah. Or they pay for, one of the things that same company also did was they would pay up to so much every year for smoking cessation. If they could get you didn't even have to successfully complete it. But if you were willing to attempt to quit smoking, then they would pay for it, up to so much gum or whatever, trying to get you to quit, because they found out that if you quit, you would end up being healthier, and it would save them money in the long run. And of course, if you're healthier, you're more productive at work. It becomes a win-win all around. If you know, says acupuncture massage. Sometimes they pay for that too. It just depends on the insurance plan. Yeah. If you know, says everybody wins. Yeah. If you're overall healthier, everybody wins. And, I'm fortunate right now. I've got decent insurance through my workplace. Other than the running around sometimes to try to do the, I got to get this visit to get to that visit, and I don't typically need much in the way of extra care. I don't go to the doctor that often. But the fact that in order to see the specialist, you got to go through 2 or 3 steps before you can get that referral is just, it's mind-boggling to me. If I know I need to go see the foot doctor or whatever, I should just get a go. Oliver's mom says some insurances give perks like gift cards for completing screenings. Yeah, I don't have one of those, but it'd be nice if I did. Although, given my track record for remembering to claim perks like that, I'd probably forget and have them stockpiled for a while, because I'd do something dumb like, unless they were physical cards mailed to me, if they were digital, I'd do something stupid like send it to a different email thinking, oh yeah, I never used that one. So when I see the notification, I'll remember, and then forget to check that email. I can see myself doing something dumb like that. If you know, says, I got a lip gloss for getting my mammogram last year. That's an interesting perk. I'm guessing they gave you some kind of a card, and that's what you use to buy it with it, maybe? Like they gave you like a prepaid Visa and you bought yourself one for it? Maybe not. Maybe that was just the perk they sent you. I don't know. If you know, says actually was at the appointment, gift bag and everything. Oh, okay then. That's still an interesting perk, but okay, nice little perk. Yeah, we got to do something with the cost of insurance and everything. I think they're going to pass the ACA subsidies, um, which is it's only going to be beneficial. But we still got to do a lot to fix insurance in this country. If says incentive. I think encourage yearly exams. Yeah, I can see that. I know. Back when I had that other insurance that offered the discount off the yearly price, it was the only reason I was getting a physical every year is because it was saving me money. Even though the physical was free, I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't have to pay an office visit or anything like that, just because it was, going to save me money in the long run. It was the only reason I was doing it. I didn't take the time to go out and do it on my own. And I worked for other companies after that, and they didn't offer that same perk, and I haven't had anything really wrong. I mean, I haven't felt bad or anything. So I really haven't gone to the doctor until I needed something. And, those incentives are kind of important. If says, I'm glad I stopped in. Great convo, good info on varied topics. Thanks, be well. Well, I'm glad you got something out of it. I've been going about 90 minutes anyway. I was just about to wrap up. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to thank everybody for joining me. And I'm going to remind you, the video from this live will be up over on YouTube sometime later tonight. The audio will be up over on Spotify, YouTube Analytical Iowan, Spotify Analytical Iowan, link tree in my bio. And I may end up staying up and actually recording a podcast yet tonight. But if I don't get to it, this is either going to be tomorrow's podcast for the Analytical Iowan podcast, or this may just be a bonus. I haven't quite decided how the night's going to go yet. But I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I plan to do more of these lives when I have time. And having another good conversation as we talk about everything that's going on. Because as I say a lot over on the podcast, there is always something to talk about. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.